If you want to know why Siemens Gamesa is betting big on a 21 megawatt offshore turbine while others scale back, what Norway's $25 billion oil and gas investment means for renewables, and how manufacturing challenges are reshaping European wind energy, stick around. Plus, we've got big news about Wind Energy O&M Australia and a chance to win an exclusive Uptime podcast mug in our first ever listener survey. I'm Alan Hall, and this is the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast.
You're listening to the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast, brought to you by BuildTurbines.com. Learn, train, and be a part of the clean energy revolution. Visit BuildTurbines.com today. Now here's your hosts, Alan Hall, Joel Saxum, Phil Totaro, and Rosemary Barnes.
Just the season of giving, and this year we want to give you a voice in shaping Uptime's future. As we wrap up another amazing year of wind energy conversations, we're launching our first ever listener survey. And yes, there's a special holiday surprise involved. Picture yourself sipping your morning coffee from an exclusive Uptime podcast mug, which could be yours just for participating. All we need is 5 minutes of your time to tell us what sparks your interest and what you'd love to hear more in 2025. Whether you've been with us since day one or just caught your first episode, your thoughts matter to us. So dash over to uptimewindenergy.com or slay down to the show notes below. And from all of us at Uptime, thank you for making this community what it is. Second, wind energy professionals won't want to miss the premier O&M event in the Asia-Pacific region, the Wind Energy O&M Australia Conference happening February 11th and 12th in Melbourne. And we're thrilled to have industry powerhouses like Tilt Renewables, Worley, Arones, Rigcom, GE Vernova, and PES Wind on board as sponsors.
And we're pleased to announce SkySpecs is actually going to be joining us as a corporate roundtable sponsor for the event.
The conference tackles crucial topics that directly impact your operations, leading-edge erosion, lightning protection, CMS, insurance, and life extension strategies. And this is your chance to connect with the industry leaders and gain practical insights that you can implement immediately. So secure your spot now by visiting windaustralia.com. And finally, don't miss out on a game-changing opportunity for your safety program. Active Training Team, known for their innovative and immersive safety training methods, is hosting a free expo in Houston on January 24th. And this isn't your typical safety presentation by no means. ATT brings safety culture to life through dynamic hands-on experiences that have transformed safety programs across the energy sector. So this is a rare chance to experience their methods firsthand. Spaces are filling up fast, so register now by emailing Florence at activetrainingteam.co.uk or visiting activetrainingteam.us/contact.
Unlock your wind farm's best performance at Wind Energy O&M Australia, February 11th to 12th in sunny Melbourne. Join industry leaders as they share practical solutions for maintenance, OEM relations, and asset management. Discover strategies to cut costs, keep your assets running smoothly, and drive long-term success in today's competitive market. Register today and explore sponsorships at www.windaustralia.com.
Well, there's a dynamic story in international trade relations happening at the moment where the president-elect of the United States has issued a statement regarding U.S.-EU trade dynamics. And through a social media post, U.S. leadership has called for a European Union to address its trade deficit with the United States through increased purchases of all things American oil and gas. Now, this threat comes in to light with all the tariff discussions that have been happening over the last several weeks. And the EU and the U.S., I think privately behind closed doors, have been talking and trying to tamp this down a little bit. But this comes in light of, Joel, that Norway is busy drilling away also, that they plan to spend about $25 billion in 2025 drilling a number of holes looking for more oil and gas, which I assume are headed right to the EU.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing about this that we have to understand is this is a wind energy podcast, so we're into renewable energy. We're looking for energy transition. I think the thing that we all need to understand is that the energy transition is not going to be a flick of a switch, right? Oil and gas is in literally everything that you touch every day, like the mouse, my computer, my cell phone, my coffee cup, like petroleum products are in everything. So until we find a different source for those products, it's not going to go away. So with that being said, you also have to understand that it's going to play a huge factor on global economics. If the U.S. wants to flex muscle, this is a way to do it. Definitely force some of our trade partners to take some more oil and gas.
Does this change the dynamic, though, in terms of renewable energy in Northern Europe or greater EU?
I don't think so as of yet. I think people will continue to push for renewable energy projects. They're just not happening quick enough, right? You can't. There's only so many good like spots for wind farms, say like in Germany, that have been cited for. Wind farms are built there, they're in operation. So you're seeing, instead of like all kinds of new field like we have in the United States, 120 turbine wind sites, they're just not being built. So you still have this gap where the thirst for natural gas for heating and power is very, very present, right? It's going to continue to happen. I don't think it'll change in the near term a whole lot. I think you still have, in my opinion, we still have 10, 20 years left of the same kind of hydrocarbon thirst that we have right now.
Phil, is there going to be a big push in terms of growth in the EU to grab more oil and gas exploration while they can?
Potentially, but let's keep a couple of things in mind with this conversation. One is that the trade imbalance between the U.S. and Europe is roughly only about $200 billion. Obviously, that's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't know why this is coming up as a topic when that's something that it could be closed by them buying more, liquefied natural gas from the U.S., which is what they're obviously trying to accomplish. But I don't know why this is a big thing. And in the meantime, Europe has bigger issues with, having Norway basically replacing, Norway's drilling replacing Russian gas supply, when they could also be investing equally as heavily into, repowering. Repowering in Spain, repowering in France, repowering in Germany, and Portugal, although that's already happening a little bit. But they're just not doing what they could be doing to take advantage of renewable energy as a power source, as opposed to continuing to operate on an oil and gas based infrastructure.
It just seems like there's a limited amount of growth in oil and gas in Europe. I know they're trying to deal, obviously, with the lack of resources coming further from the east, but that won't last that long. It doesn't seem like it. With all the electricity generation that's happening off the coast of the United Kingdom and other places, there's going to be a lot of electricity feeding Europe here shortly. It doesn't seem like it would be the right time necessarily to put a bunch of money into oil and gas, but Equinor, being one of the players here, is doing it, which is kind of odd also because Equinor is the second largest stakeholder in Ørsted, which is the renewable energy leader in Europe for the most part. There's a lot of dynamics happening here. Do you think that this is going to, over the next couple of months as the new administration comes in, you think this is going to tamper down, or is this just going to get elevated even more and more as the discussions about trade deficits and tariffs pick up?
I think it'll ramp up, to be honest with you. I mean, I guess let's go back and look at Norway. Why Norway does what they do in the oil and gas world, even though they're touted as one of the most green societies. They have the highest adoption rate of EVs. They run on a lot of renewable energy themselves. The majority of it's renewable. A lot of hydro up there. But they are also, I believe it is, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong here, but per capita, the richest country in the world, or one of the richest countries, the top three. Because and all of that is based on oil and gas monies in the sovereign wealth fund of the country of Norway. So they've built their economy on oil and gas. They know how to do it. They know how to do it well, and they see that over the next, I think there was a study that came out by 2050. There's a reserves that they should be exploring internally right now that are worth $1.4 trillion. So I think they're trying to set themselves up for the future, no matter what the future looks like. They themselves, they're pretty set for renewable energies in that transition. but they're building as much wealth as they can now for what happens next.
To their credit, they have been investing some of that sovereign wealth fund money in renewables. But as their pot grows, the percentage that they're investing in renewables hasn't necessarily grown. It's just that they're, incrementally as their pie gets bigger, they're spending more money, as an absolute value, but they're still spending the bulk of that sovereign wealth fund money and reinvesting in oil and gas exploration and extraction, as opposed to, spending more on renewables. So we still need them to get them to shift that percentage so that we increase more money flowing to, more capital flowing to renewable energy projects.
As wind energy professionals, staying informed is crucial and, let's face it, difficult. That's why the Uptime Podcast recommends PES Wind Magazine. PES Wind offers a diverse range of in-depth articles and expert insights that dive into the most pressing issues facing our energy future. Whether you're an industry veteran or new to wind, PES Wind has the high-quality content you need. Don't miss out. Visit peswind.com today. On the tails of our discussion about oil and gas in Norway, there are effects happening downstream, not directly related, but somewhat related. Siemens Gamesa has reached a pre-agreement with unions to implement temporary layoffs, affecting a little over 400 workers at several of its wind turbine manufacturing sites in Spain. Now, these temporary layoffs involve benefits up to 85% of the workers' salary. So the workers get 85% of their base salary for the time they're being laid off. And it requires the workers to agree to this. But you see this kind of ebb and flow within Siemens Gamesa, where they've had trouble with some of the 4X and the 5X machines that seem to be mostly based in Spain. And the 4X machine just started reselling a couple of months ago. The 5X, who knows, haven't heard much about it lately. And meanwhile, Siemens Gamesa is selling offshore turbines that are made elsewhere outside of Spain. And it just seems like Spain and the older Gamesa parts of Siemens Gamesa are going to be impacted over the next couple of months. And similar things are happening up in Vestas in the Isle of Wight. Its manufacturing facility there, the plan was to shut it all down. There were 600 workers there. But it looks like they're going to try to negotiate with the UK government to save about 300 manufacturing positions for onshore wind blade projects. Basically, they ran out of sales on the offshore blade that was being manufactured there, and it was over. They didn't have any more orders, so they were just going to close it. That's a huge problem. Now, remember Vestas and some of the people we talk to regularly, like Nicholas Godern and some others. There's a technology center at the Isle of Wight that is not being affected. So that will remain open, and part of their R&D blade development will still exist there. But the manufacturing is in trouble, which leads to sort of the greater discussion of wind turbine manufacturing in Europe is generally in trouble. You don't see the amount of growth that you would like to see there at the minute. And with the shifting of resources and the closing of some facilities and temporary layoffs, although they be temporary, it's not indicative of growth in 2025 or 2026. Is that how you're reading these tea leaves, Joel?
Well, yeah, 100%. And what I'm seeing is like, okay, so let's dial it back to the Siemens thing. We've heard for the last year and a half. I mean, we were having this same conversation almost last year at this time about the 4X and 5X machines not being sold. And once they do say, you know what, we fixed the problems, and we're going to start selling them again, there's going to be a ramp up period to get those sales back out, to get wind farms, permitted and sited. And this is going to be our turbine of choice. And in the meantime, there is other 4X and 5X machines out there on the market. Nordex's is out there. I've seen some GE 5.5s being installed in the States. So other turbines have kind of backfilled some of that spot. So in my mind, I expected this to happen in Spain earlier. I expected this to happen back this past summer. But now that we're seeing that, they've gone back to sales of this platform that was manufactured here, and the sales may not look that good or that promising, I think at a certain time you just gotta start trimming the fat. You got to get back to that. I guess what GE was saying is going lean.
Phil, does that bode well Because we're not seeing a closure in Spain, for example, is not being offset by more factories being built in Brazil or in India. You're not seeing a shift in manufacturing. You're just seeing the closing or the reduction of some of the sites. That can't be good. And is that just then forcing a real significant play for European manufacturers, Vestas and Siemens, into offshore? Is that where the money's going to be?
Ultimately, factory closures or even temporary reductions are usually tied to order book. So if they're not getting the order book that those factories normally serve, then it's just a prudent thing to ramp down, even though, again, in the case of Siemens Gamesa, they're going to be paying out 85% of the salaries for a period of technically up to 2 years, according to the agreement that they have in place with the union over there. So I don't think it's going to, people are going to be sitting on the sidelines for 2 years. At least I certainly hope not. Their factory workers should be able to get back to work in late 2025, early 2026. But the reality of that is it's, again, as Joel said, it's kind of predicated on the order book that they've got and what they need to be able to do to deliver. Now, in the meantime, as you've proposed, how do they make money? Well, it's going to be on services, for which a lot of the installed capacity in Europe that they've deployed, whether it's Siemens, Vestas, GE, or Nordex, or even Enercon for that matter, in the past 5 or so years, pretty much, I don't have a precise number, but I'm gonna venture a guess and say it's got to be 80 to 85% of the capacity installed in Europe has an OEM service contract. Maybe not a full wrap service contract to go with it, but a lot of it's OEM service. So that is a revenue generator for them. And then also, as you mentioned, offshore is also a possibility, both on the turbine manufacturing and installation, as well as services in offshore as well.
Talking Vestas, in the same thing, downsizing, changing over a facility, what to do with the people. They're going to offer the people that lose jobs at theirs. They're going from 600 people down to 300. They're going to offer them positions in different places within Vestas greater. So I like that approach, because you keep those employees and you keep some of the knowledge base there. But on the other side of this, some of the repurposing of that facility that we were talking about with Vestas is driven by the UK government, because they're going to start making more onshore blades out of what was at a facility for offshore blades. So that helps for growth as well. So the Vestas, you're seeing, I don't want it to be doom and gloom, right? You're talking about Siemens layoffs and Vestas cutting jobs and stuff. But some of the Vestas facilities will be repurposed as well.
Dealing with damaged blades? Don't let slow repairs keep your turbines down. Blade Platforms get you back up and running fast. Blade Platforms truck-mounted platforms reach up to 100 meters, allowing for quick setup, improved safety, and efficient repairs. Book soon to secure your spot and experience a difference in blade access, speed, and efficiency. Visit bladeplatforms.com and get started today. Well, that leads into another discussion about Siemens Gamesa, because there's been photos taken and images shown on the interwebs of Siemens Gamesa 21 megawatt offshore wind turbine prototype headed to Denmark's Østerild Test Center. And the unannounced turbine, which is being dubbed the SG21-276DD, features 135 meter blades and a 276 meter rotor diameter, making it, that would be the largest wind turbine ever built in Europe. And the specifications include, obviously in the name, direct drive, DD, and a pitch power output of 21 to 23 megawatts and 132 kilovolt output voltage. So that's unique. Now, this is got to be a huge risk for Siemens Gamesa, just because of the size of the turbine, with all the things we just saw with Ming Yang and those blades break in that dramatic video, and all the problems that Vernova's been having offshore in the UK and off the coast of Massachusetts with blades of a pretty significant size. Is the Siemens Gamesa 21 megawatt make a lot of sense here now that sort of Vestas and GE have backed off and said 15 is where they're going to stop? And GE Vernova basically saying they're not going to build any offshore wind turbines for a while, so they're just competing with Vestas. Vestas will sit at 15. Siemens Gamesa will be at 21 with a completely new turbine. How is Siemens Gamesa going to de-risk this and get people to the table to order these turbines?
Well, you've got a couple of things going on here. One is they wouldn't be building a turbine unless there was demand, because it's, $250 million in non-recurring engineering costs to design and build, a brand new product, especially a big offshore product like a 21 megawatt turbine. So there's that. At the end of the day, if Siemens doesn't build a 21 megawatt wind turbine and the Chinese have them, aren't you going to expect that unless there's some kind of regulation put in place by the EU that says thou shalt not buy Chinese wind turbines, that what's their other option going to be? Developers are going to, again, want the biggest thing they can get their hands on. So if there's no Western OEM that's offering them that option, it almost necessitates them taking the Chinese product offering seriously.
We know that GE is stopping, right? We know GE said, no, we're not doing the 18 megawatt machine. We're not doing offshore. All sales stop, everything there. Alan, do you believe that Siemens' move here will force Vestas into making a bigger turbine?
Vestas isn't doing anything. I think they're going to hold pat. They're going to let Siemens Gamesa head down this 20-plus megawatt turbine route. My question is, if Siemens is going to go after this, how long will they have to test it at the test site before they give it the green light and decide to get into some sort of production sense? I think it'll have to sit there at least a year, maybe longer, before they'll build confidence in it, because everything's new, right? It's such a risky thing. If you just watched the internet 2 weeks ago, it would scare the heck out of you, anything that was above 15 megawatts.
Again, it comes back to the developers wanting a turbine of that size. So how long it gets tested for is ultimately going to be down to, well, if there's a developer that says that they need that thing in 36 months for a commercial project, for it to be manufactured at scale for delivery in 36 months to a commercial project, that's what they're going to have to do.
But that's a huge risk, Phil. I mean, who's going to insure that thing? And who's going to backstop it on the downside on the financing? That's a big question, particularly for Europe.
This has also been the challenge, right? Because the insurance companies are already complaining about the payouts on 10 to 12 megawatt turbines. We haven't even gotten to the 15 megawatt turbines even operating really yet. And when we get to 20 megawatt turbines, again, we've talked about this ad nauseum on the show. We don't have the vessels to install or service these things. And we don't have, all these other ancillary things that are going to come into play for deploying anything that large. So it's an absolutely enormous risk.
Wouldn't the plan be, though, if China's developing these 20-plus megawatt turbines, to use the ships from China and just send them over to France or wherever these things are going to go, Germany, and have them install the turbines there?
Works fine for any country that doesn't have the equivalent of the Jones Act, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, Europe doesn't have that restriction. So is that then the play that Siemens says, I'm watching all the shipbuilding happening in China, so I don't have to do that infrastructure build here in the EU? I'm just going to tap into the China ship brigade. I'm going to put somebody on a calendar. I don't know who that developer is at the minute, because there's been no talk of that at all. I got a couple of guesses, but nothing that's firm. It does seem like a huge risk, though, that I don't. It's not a typical European thing to do. Usually in these new developments, they're going to sit there for a year or two and make sure that everything is working just fine and not trying to have the problem that GE is having, because Siemens is not in any financial state to take that huge risk at the minute, I wouldn't think.
We've seen, Alan, you and I've talked to people, big wind farms, just onshore ones even. These turbines are getting bought, developed, and everything trucked to site right now, and they still don't have type certificates, right? So in my mind, I think if I'm a certification body, or if I'm anybody involved in certifying that turbine to go into a wind farm, whether it's the person on the hook for insurance, the person on the hook for finance, I'm staring at the independent third party that's supposed to validate this thing. And if I'm in that person's shoes, I'm thinking, man, we need to go through this with a fine tooth comb, because the whole dang world in offshore wind, the whole supply chain's watching. So let's not get this one wrong.
Joel, an independent third-party validated LM Wind Power's blade manufacturing facility in Gaspé, didn't they? So I don't think that certification matters that much.
Yeah, I want to think with what has happened lately in the headline news headlines may churn up or churn the waters up a little bit more, or get someone to stand up and say, hey, we've got to make sure the thing is solid before it goes out.
But then you're talking about, now insurance companies are recognizing that maybe the certification body's not doing their job, and they're going to start raising premiums because there's more risk exposure for them, which again, as we've talked about with high insurance rates, high, supply chain limitations and high prices for components, you're now adding, extra insurance premiums on top of all that. Eventually, at some point, that's got to not make commercial sense to do 21 megawatt wind turbines. So there's got to be a tipping point here that we haven't reached yet, but we got to be approaching it.
I'm with you, Phil, and I think that like at an early stage, like if I deal with the insurance industry quite a bit, there is not a lot of dedicated engineers there, right? You'd think at an early stage you need to get finance, an engineering representative for a finance, which would more than likely be a consultant. Engineering representative for whoever's going to insure it, or the group that's going to insure it, and more than likely a consultant. You would think that you'd want to grab those people and get them involved as early as possible. And we know that unlike industry norms where manufacturers announce turbines at the design stage, Siemens Gamesa has kept this thing very secretive. So that means that more than likely that's not happening right now.
Lightning is an act of God, but lightning damage is not. Actually, it's very predictable and very preventable. Strike Tape is a lightning protection system upgrade for wind turbines made by WeatherGuard. It dramatically improves the effectiveness of the factory LPS so you can stop worrying about lightning damage. Visit weatherguardwind.com to learn more, read a case study, and schedule a call today.
Well, a growing trend in workplace communication is emerging as professionals adopt a more direct and assertive out-of-office message. If you've seen a lot of the out-of-office messages around the holidays now, they range from "I will be out until January 3rd" kind of message, or "I'm going to my ski chalet and I will be back in February," and to "We'll be out. However, if you need something, here's the person to contact." So there's a wide range of them. And some of them are, "Don't try emailing me. Don't try calling me. My cell phone is off. You have no contact with anybody. Don't even try it." Messages, which, guys, I'm not sure that makes any sense at all, but that seems to be where we're at right now. And it's getting a lot of pushback.
I think it's like anything else where the pendulum swings, right? Like in the United States, we've been so available and open to, making business work and those kind of things forever. That's part of our culture here. It's not more like the European culture. They're like, "I'm on vacation, don't talk to me." We don't have that. We're like, you know what? We'll make it happen. Just shoot me a note. I think I never put an out of office reply in an email until I worked for a Danish company, because I was just like, I'm actually not gone. Like if I'm available, I will try to help. So I think that I just think while we should respect people's time off, from a business standpoint, don't be rude. Put it in there. Like, hey, I'm going to be gone. If you need to talk contracts, call Phil. If you need to talk lightning, call Alan. Like, and give the whoever's contacting you some kind of call to action, like that they can actually get done what they need to get done.
Have you seen more aggression in those over the years? Because when it first started with email years ago, when you could have an automated message go out, it was very direct. And a lot of times the corporate overlords would tell you what you could write in those messages. And it came down to, "I will be out of the office from here to here. This is who to reach in my absence. I'll see you when I get back," kind of message. But really now it could be anything. I mean, a lot of them are really snarky. Have you noticed that that for whatever reason they get a little bit aggressive, and it's like, I'm not sure that's a good idea. I'm not sure your management would approve of that message, but I do see them quite often. I mean, we deal with companies all over the world, obviously, so we see a little bit of everything.
I think it's corporate communications, right? It's the same thing as someone handing you, like when you hire on at a company and they're like, "Here's your email signature." Some companies will give you, "Here's what your out of office replies are. This is the template. Use this." And I think that's smart, because then you can drive it from the proper perspective, especially people that are more external facing than internal.
And some of us don't I don't think I've ever used ever in 20 plus years of working an out of office thing, not just because I'm some American workaholic, but it also comes back to what Joel was talking about. Like work-life balance means that you're available when the company needs you to be, but you can also go manage your time however you want. If you're a salaried employee, you're not supposed to be chained to a desk 9 to 5. And especially in today's kind of, although everybody's trying to force everybody to come back to an office now, but, after COVID with the hybrid work or remote work possibilities, people are paid to get a job done, not drive a desk for 40 hours a week. So like, let them get the job done for you. If they're not, they're out the door. But, don't create a hostile environment with potential customers by putting up a message that makes it sound like you're not open for business.
And when you do come back, make sure you turn that system off. I've been around a lot of email where I know the person is back, but they're still getting the auto reply back. Like, hey, the auto reply is still on. Like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot. That explains a lot. That one's always a funny one. Same thing with the phones, right? Sometimes they forward their phone number to the person the next desk over, and they wonder why they're not getting any phone messages. Wow, the person down the row is swamped with work. Yeah, when you come back, you got to make sure you get back into the system and get rowing again with the rest of the team.
This week's wind farm of the week is Timber Mill Wind over in Chowan County, North Carolina. And this is if you're familiar with North Carolina, this is a rural community, a lot of farming and a lot of course, timber harvesting, hence the name Timber Mill. But the project will have a capacity of up to 189 megawatts, producing enough power to juice up 47,000 homes per year. So it's going to have about 45 turbines, spaced a quarter to a half mile apart. And it's planned to be located on managed timberland and open farmland. So the idea behind it was we'd love to put some wind in here. We'd love to get some renewable energy and some jobs and a bit of an economic boom to this rural area. But we do not want to affect how the area actually produces and goes about its daily lives. So they've got this thing set up so it's not affecting farmland very much, and it's not affecting timber harvesting, which is a big revenue generator there. So in Chowan County, I want to focus on that a little bit. It's a good wind resource there. There's existing on-site transmission lines and road infrastructure, and they avoided a bunch of sensitive military and environmental areas when they built this thing. So North Carolina, not usually what you think of when you hear of new big wind farms, but the Timber Mill Wind Project is just that. So you are our wind farm of the week.
That's going to do it for this week's Uptime Wind Energy podcast. And thanks for listening. And please give us a 5-star rating on your podcast platform and subscribing in the show notes below to Uptime Tech News or Substack newsletter. And we'll see you here next week on the Uptime Wind Energy podcast.